Vandeham Sri Guru.
So we'll be doing, today Nitama Prantu couldn't come. There's a lot of things happening right now. So I missed it. I'm a bad substitute, but I'll try nevertheless. I'm also a little sick, so forgive me if I cough a little bit in the middle. So anatomy of anger. This presentation has been done a few times in the past, so I've heard him speak, so I'll try to best represent. So we'll be talking basically based on the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, which is, he made it very easy for us to understand Bhagavad Gita. So a little bit about Prabhupada. He's the founder of this International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And he came at the age of 70 to the Western world to bring this 5,000-year-old knowledge so that the Westerners could also have access to this treasure of knowledge. So what we'll cover today is problems, causes, symptoms, and solutions related to anger. So beginning with definition, somebody wants to define what anger is? Okay, anybody who's never been angry in their lives?
It's a state of mind kind of state of mind what you generally get when you're helpless, kind of, and you can't do anything about it.
Frustration.
Yeah.
So there's a few definitions. A strong feeling of displeasure or aggression, hostility aroused by suspected wrong. So suspected wrong is highlighted because a lot of times we, as we were learning in the descending process, we focus on our limited senses, intelligence and mind to interpret certain situations. They might or might not be right, but we get emotions based out of that. A response to the frustration of an unresolved problem, similar to what Aditya Prabhu was saying. A sudden violent displeasure accompanied by an impulse to retaliate. So without even thinking, sometimes people just act. You punch me, I'll punch you back, or stab you in extreme cases, something. But anger really takes over our consciousness. We become different people. So it's very, very, it's a problem that everybody faces at every stage. So some quotes. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You're the one who gets burnt. It's true, right? Like sometimes, there are issues where, let's say, boyfriend, girlfriend, there's a separation. Somebody cheated on somebody, they are happy with their lover. Here's this one person, feeling terrible and angry and cursing that person. But, this person is getting burnt, whereas that person is enjoying. And that's because there is attachment. So we'll talk more about attachment and expectations, why anger happens and how we can resolve it. That's the next one. Speak when you're angry, and you will make the best speech you'll ever regret. It is said that words are more powerful than arrows. You can pull out arrows, but words, once said, cannot be taken back. So sometimes we say things to our very close, near and dear ones that we don't mean to. And it creates a lifetime worth of scratch on a scar on that person's consciousness. So, like I said, anger makes us a whole different persons that we are not, and we make a lot of mistakes. Anger is one letter short of danger. Eleanor Roosevelt. So consequences of anger, there's on a whole different levels, physiological, not spoiling, we say, right? Literally hearts pounding and stress, and sometimes people get heart attacks from anger. Emotional, of course. Social, there's all kinds of fights going on, communal wars, between different ethnicities, Middle East, India, Africa, different places. Financial, people break down buildings, burn down cars, whatever. Especially coming from India, that happens all the time. No matter what, people, just for the heck of it, they'll do it, just because they can. Familial, there's always issues with parents, something. And of course, political. All the wars that are happening right now, I believe there are 62 wars that are happening currently in this planet. And there's a lot of political anger, as you might call it. So I'll take you through a case study, how this works. So let's say she is, let's call her Addie. Addie sees somebody that she likes. Wow, who is that? I wish we could, and you can fill up the blanks. I hope one day we would. It could be get married or date or whatever. So she's thinking, contemplating in her mind. So now Addie saw somebody and that person might have just passed by. But in her mind, she's repeating that image more and more, thinking about him or contemplating it and making hopes. And then thinking 5 days later, she's like, oh my God, I think I'm in love. I'm definitely going to make a move next time I see that person. And then she sees this person with somebody else. Oh my God, who's that? Why are they holding hands? Life sucks. Frustration. So that's where the anger happens. So in language of Bhagavad Gita, this is how Krishna explains it. It's an 8-step process. So those of us that have studied Bhagavad Gita probably knows chapter 2, 62 and 63. While contemplating the objects of senses, a person develops attachment for them. So first the contemplation. With the eyes, we saw, that girl saw that person one time. But then in the mind, there's contemplation. Maybe this, maybe that. And from that, attachment develops. So now you're getting attached to thoughts of dating or marriage or whatever goes through one's mind. And from such attachment, lust develops. Lust, it's a loose translation from Bhagavad Gita. It's not just sexual desires, but it's any desire that is very selfish, materially motivated desire. That's lust. So from attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises. Why does anger arise from lust?
You expect something and you don't.
Okay. Anybody else?
Deep attachment for the object.
And so what exactly happens? So there is attachment, there is expectation. Why does it not work out?
When expectation is not reached.
Not?
When expectation is not reached.
When things don't go according to plan or whatever.
Okay. So let's think more about the spiritual and the material distinctions. We've heard from Nityananda Prabhu about spirit and matter, the distinction. Somebody would like to define spirit and matter? The characters, qualities associated.
Consciousness, spirit, is conscious,
Matter is dead. Okay. Specifically, spirit has the property of being eternal, cognizant, and blissful. Matter has just the opposite property. It's temporary, which means it will break someday, bound to break. It's dull, doesn't have consciousness. You cannot derive pleasure from a table. Some people think they get pleasure from iPhone, but it's actually the person who's texting you back. That's the pleasure, not the machine itself. You take out the battery, you're not going to derive any pleasure. So it's just the opposite. So when we are on a material consciousness, which is specifically focusing on the body, on the form, not the person, then our expectation is bound to be unmet. Or rather, our expectation, because it's on the material platform, is not eternal, it's temporary. So from anger, complete delusion arises. So like we saw, from anger, it takes over. So we say things or do things that are very unintelligent. Delusion, bewilderment of memory. What does that mean? We forget that this is my loved one, or this is not how I should act in the proper way, or these are not the words I should say. So memory is lost. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When intelligence is lost, one falls down again to the material pool. So and this doesn't happen in a serial way, one after another. This happens all at once. It's a very instant reaction. Contemplation, attachment, lust, anger. It does it downward spiral. So the anatomy of anger. I say this, so I just want to visually just go through this. So there's contemplation, there's decision making, then there is expectation, and when expectations are not met, there is anger. So thinking, feeling, and willing. This all happens on the subtle platform, and then it comes out on the gross platform. So matter, as we know, has two aspects. One is subtle matter, one is gross matter. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then there's a mind, intelligence, and ego, or false ego. So first things appear on the subtle platform, on the mind platform. And as we take it through the steps of thinking, feeling, and willing, then comes execution. And we act. And sometimes we don't even think, we just act. Because it's retaliation. And the results are guaranteed. So when you're angry, you know things will be messed up. So anger, from that, delusionment, loss of memory, indiscrimination. We don't care who this person is, we just act. So there's two kinds of anger. There's primary anger and secondary anger. Primary anger is actually healthy. In the sense that, let's say somebody cuts you off while you're driving, or professor's not being fair. So we have this little anger. But we don't go and beat up the professor. We just feel a little anger and move on with life. So that's the normal part. But secondary anger is just overreaction over something that might or might not be so big. But to the person it feels life and death. Like maybe, I don't mean to be, for some girls, breaking a nail could be a big deal. They'll start crying over it. So I know my mother does that. So, but for others it might not matter. But it can be life and death for some. So secondary anger is disproportionate reaction to the cause of anger. Here you can see a mosquito. So angry, he wants to just shoot the mosquito with a gun. And it doesn't serve any constructive purpose. Whereas primary anger can actually serve constructive purpose. For example, you can walk up to the professor and say, well, I don't think you were being fair. I need a better grade. You can think, you can act from intelligence platform. Here, you act from completely, without thinking. And it's generally destructive. So there are various kinds of, not everybody takes out a gun and shoots. There are others who are passive aggressive. And that could be a very, very deep problem, leading to, in fact, a lot of physical health problems. Certain people, they don't let it out. They'll just, and the person who might be unknowingly doing something to annoy you, wouldn't know that, and the person keeps doing it, and then the volcanic eruption one day happens, and something really bad happens. So communication is key, especially when it comes to relationships. There's a husband-wife relationship. I'm not married, so I don't do marriage jokes. Prabhuji is expert at that. But turn it loose. Just like 10 years ago you did this, and I did this, and you didn't, come to my father's birthday, whatever, and that might be not related to the topic of discussion, but things come up, and that's the volcanic eruption, and that leads to deterioration of relationships, because there is no communication. Let's say when there is a little scar, you don't communicate that there is a scar. This needs to be fixed, and later on it becomes a bigger problem, and it's not fixable. Another symptom is blaming others, lack of ownership. To err is human. What's the other part?
To blame is more.
To forgive is.
Thank you. But this is Prabhuji's version. To blame it on someone else is more human. So 3 ways how anger arises. Lack of understanding, false expectations, and underlined desires. And please stop me if I'm going too fast. Lack of understanding in the sense that when there are two personalities or more than it is beyond me, we don't make an attempt to understand the person on the other side. Why such and such person is acting in such and such way. Rather, in a debate, I was an RA at IIT, and it was very easy to see people would keep blaming each other and both persons will want to have their last word because they want to win. It's not about understanding why this person is acting in such a way. So lack of understanding is a big problem. False expectations. A lot of parents, because a lot of Indians are here, have the expectation that my child is the best in the class. He has to get the best rank. He has to get all A's. And that might not be true. And it might not be even true that if you get all A's, you'll be the most successful person in life. But that is a false expectation. And when that doesn't happen, like there is this lady who comes to our temple, and I think some of you might know this story, but she came and she was praying for days. And then somebody asked, what are you praying for? She said, I'm praying that my son gets 10 A's in all 10 subjects. And 2 days later she came, really angry, and said, Krishna, my son got 8 A's and 2 B's. You're so unfair. So, false expectations. Underlying desires. Like I said, desires on the material platform versus on the soul platform. There are couples that live together for 50, 60 years. Yeah, and there are people I know that marry 4 or 5 times and still going through the process at their very later stage of their lives. And because the consciousness is not on the person and the qualities, but on the bodily aspect or behavior, or I like that person's eyes. Now, how long are your eyes going to look pretty? Once you turn 40, things are just going to go down. But that's what happens. So the definition according to Bhagavad Gita, last, like I said, intense desire for selfish enjoyment. The grossest form is sex, but there is, on the subtle form, there is so many different ways. How about we have a little discussion? What are some of the ways that one can have subtle lust?
Great food, cuisines.
Watching movies.
I'm sorry?
Watching movies.
Watching movies. Yeah, I remember after I stopped eating at restaurants, I was thinking of Giordano's pizza as my favorite. And so one day I just went, just for the heck of it. And it was terrible. It just didn't, fit the taste palette at all. And so there was like unmet expectation and frustration. Like, this is not what we thought the pizza was. But in the mind, it repeats itself like, oh, it's very delicious. So like that, in various ways we have material expectations. And lust is a perfect setup for anger. And so there's expressions of anger, which generally it comes from pain or sorrow. And that roots itself from a lack of love. It's either parental love, it's either love on a conjugal level, it's love on a friendship level. Somewhere in that person's life something is missing. Yes, Guru.
Is this receiving love or giving love?
Well, it's both,
Okay.
but mostly receiving it. A lot of bullies, I have done a little study on that for my business, and it seems like most bullies are abusers. They have been abused as a child, or they have not received that love where there's a big emptiness, big hollow. And even though people think when they're young, like, I'll never let this happen to anybody when I grow up, but somehow it turns out such that they also become abusers and bullies. And that's how it comes out. So when somebody is expressing anger, it's very important to understand, firstly, it's important to press the pause button and just stand like, okay, what's happening here? Why is this person acting like this? And think through the process that there must be something that's bothering this person. And I have done this to many people. And I ask them, like, this is not what you're arguing about. There is something happening. Yes, I had a fight with my wife. It comes out. After a little bit of pushing, it comes out. We actually have a professor, I'm not going to name him because it's on camera, but he literally comes to class and says, on days I'm angry, know for a fact I had a fight with my wife. So, and there are other examples too. But there is something else happening. That's why there is anger. Because we are all looking for love. We're looking for love in a spouse kind of way, or if you cannot, sometimes it's dog. Sometimes it's something. Cars, people have passionate hobbies. But we are all looking for love. That's just the nature of the soul. And material love, like matter, breaks down, changes, falls down. It's bound to happen. One thing that doesn't change is the soul. Our body changes. If you see here, our body is changing. And life after life, the soul, the spiritual being, is eternal. And it's moving on from one body to another. That's who we are. It's not this man body or the Indian body, or we are the spiritual being, which is part of the supreme being. And so the spiritual nature, we have a spiritual nature. Okay, I'll get to that point. So we have a spiritual nature, and when we act, like Prabhuji was giving the example that one person might be on stage acting as a queen, and when she goes home, she should act like a housewife, or whatever she might be, a friend, a neighbor. But if she acts like a queen when she goes home, that's a little weird. Here, we are spiritual beings, but we act like we're this body. I am Mr. So-and-so, and by the way, I have this, I have that degree, but that's not who we are. And we connect on that level. So I'm looking for, because I like physics, I'm looking for a girlfriend who likes physics. Now, tomorrow or 2 years later, you might be liking chemistry or business. What happens to the girlfriend? Because that's how nature is. Material nature changes. So when we connect on the soul platform, that's a whole different form of relationship that is not just sustainable, but it grows over time. I asked Prabhuji one time, about his relationship with his wife. So before you took up this process of Krishna consciousness and after, do you think the relationship deteriorated? And he said, no. I love my wife way more on a whole different level than I used to before Krishna consciousness, because right now it's on the spiritual platform. It's a mood of service, serving each other to have a God-centered life, to raise a child. It's not about exploitation. It's not about you give me this and you get this from me. So that is what we're learning, and we'll learn through the course of the semester of how to have spiritual relationships, how to have a mood of service, and how to gain. You don't have to gain happiness; it just comes as a byproduct. So transform the kinds of desires we have. Desire is the root cause of anger, and attachment for an outcome leads to that anger. Outcomes are affected by so many other things, and so if you have that attachment, it's very foolish in a way, because so many things can change that outcome. Like that lady whose son had got 8 A's and 2 B's. You cannot really control it. So spiritual desires, some of those things are to know God, to connect with God, to have relationship with God, to live a God-centered life. What about people? Because we don't live with God, right? We live with people.
Treat people thinking they're souls
How do you
on
do
the
that?
spiritual level, rather than having expectations because everything is temporary.
And what helps with that process is to see each and every person as part of the Supreme Being that we all are. So we are all connected to each other through that Supreme Person. And when we see that, the whole race, gender, caste, creed, nationality, all these barriers that are set forth, or religion, doesn't really matter. Species, because some people, within human beings, we can put the coexist sticker on the back of the car, or say, okay, I'm very tolerant, but then we go out and plunder forests or slaughter animals. I believe something like 300 million cows are killed every day for McDonald's itself. So things like that, it's because we see these animals as objects, with the price tag. We call them products. It's unbelievable. A conscious being is called a product. So, and that's how we see each other too. When coming from the business world, when we go on networking dinners, every person has an idea of what I can get from this person. So the whole interaction is based on, okay, I'm a consultant, I need this, so I'm going to find blah 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 who can get me something that I'll get from. It's not about relationships. And I'll tell you, I have, following these principles, I have built relationships that are still there. They're very long and they're growing. And people ask me, what is it? What is so different about me and my business partner? We're both following this. And the qualities come out. We talk about qualities, we talk about what we follow. Because the cage, which is the material body, can be polished very nicely. But if the bird inside is not fed, it's useless. So, how do we nourish the soul? One practice we have, and it's given in the Vedic literatures, is chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So, every person in this, following this sect, we chant the Hare Krishna mantra and we meditate on the sound vibration. And there are myriads of texts and literatures that talk about the glories of the name of God. And every religion talks about, glorifies the name of God. So what we'll do is we'll try out, so do you have the beats? Okay. So we'll try chanting for 10 minutes, just meditate on it, and then I'll show you a video, and we'll edit there. How was it? The first timers?
Pretty good.
What specifically?
It was great to like zone out and like just go with the frequency instead of like stopping at thought.
Somebody else? First time chanting?
It's good, but actually I've already been doing pranayama and all those things, so I'm not new to this. It's really refreshing.
Yes. Okay. So this is a very, very powerful mantra, and through sound, sound is a very powerful technique. Even Hitler, for example, with speech, he could really, stir up a lot of crowd, or politicians do that all the time. So sound can be used in various ways, just like fire. And some sounds are spiritual in nature. So when we repeat them, it cleanses our heart from the different contaminations that we have, that stops, like I was hearing the example today morning, that an iron and a magnet is naturally attractive to each other. But when the iron is covered with dirt, then that attraction is gone. So the material contamination, the absorption of matter, really doesn't allow us to experience the spiritual happiness. And through the process of meditation, it's a cleansing process. So we just don't meditate, we also have other ways. So I'll show you a very funny video. Wi-Fi not connected?
Function F1 or something. It's Wi-Fi. Function F1 or F2. Yeah, it's on.
Well, this is happening. Any questions on that anatomy of anger?
There are times when anger is justified, right?
Yeah, the primary anger. There was a primary and secondary anger,
Even the secondary anger may be justified sometimes.
right? Like what? Give me an example.
There have been wars that were needed. They were for good, right? You can call the Mahabharata war. It was even the Krishna was there. And
So was it out of anger, you think?
there was anger involved, isn't it?
Well, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, the whole first and second chapter, in fact, the whole Bhagavad Gita, he's just trying to escape war. He doesn't want to fight it. But then it's done as a matter of duty. Violence, on the other hand, yes, there is role for violence. Chicago police cannot just say, we want, do our job, our duty. If somebody's robbing somebody and police says, no, I'm not violent, that's wrong. But anger, on the other hand, really takes over our mind and intelligence. That's what was being said here. Because it doesn't allow us to act in the most proper way. Whereas violence can be done as a matter of duty, as a responsibility, following the rules and regulations. A police cannot just tase anybody who, uses the F word at the police, right? You have to have certain legal reasons to use a taser or a gun or whatever. Sometimes they do get into angry mode, and then the police are sent for, paid vacations, as they call it. But that's because they break the rule. They act out of anger, and they misuse the power that have been vested by the government. So anger never leads to good things. But on the other side, we do have anger. We do have various things that are not so nice, like greed or envy. So there is a way to spiritualize it, like Hanuman's example. His tail was set on fire, monkey, and he lit up the entire Lanka as a service to Lord Ramachandra. So for those that are not familiar with Ramayana, it won't make sense. But the point is, anger can be used in service. So a teacher can use, and that's not anger, it can, let's call it spiritual anger, to chastise somebody, to correct an error. Like, hey, you're jumping off the cliff, don't do it. Like a mother, if a child is putting his finger on the flame, mother will say, don't do it. Child doesn't listen. Pull his hands out, don't do it. That's out of love. It's not anger, but one can see it as anger. But the motivation is different. But the motivation is, I want to cause harm to this person because this person has done this to me. Then it's a whole different scenario. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that perspective is absolutely right. But if we see someone is doing something wrong, so sometimes we need to get angry in order to do the justice, isn't it?
There is different.
Like all the major revolutions, they happened because the common public was angry towards some person or some government or something.
And what happened as a result?
Sometimes we get good results out of that because, like you must be aware of the recent Delhi case which was in news, the Delhi rape case. People got angry, and that's why they came on the street and they protested, and that's why something is happening. Government is planning to change the rules and all. Sometimes we need to show the anger. I think that we need to show that we are angry. Yes.
If you can really control yourself and just show where it's necessary, fantastic. But generally, it's not a show of anger. It's actually anger, and we act without thinking, and that's what anger is. It's destructive in nature. The thing that happened in Delhi, that was protest or rebellion, they didn't go around killing people. Generally in revolutions, like in France, they were murdering people. Yes, outcome was democracy and whatnot, but there was a lot of loss of lives. So there was a lot of destruction. A lot of innocent lives were taken. So there is room for anger, like I said, yes. And for that, one has to be on a spiritually elevated situation where they can control their anger and use it accordingly, just like fire. A person who's a good cook knows how to use fire appropriately. A child might just burn out the whole house. So there is room for everything, but for that, one has to be skilled. One has to have a fundamental basis of understanding the difference between the temporary and the eternal. And that's what we are studying here with Bhagavad Gita, is understanding how to use things properly from a spiritual perspective. Any other questions?